TV. This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Everyone, RTV Sports Rap back again. Thank you so much for tuning in. Spencer Byers alongside me, JC Coots and Manny Pava. And guys, a continuing circulating topic within sports is gambling, is sports betting. Now with the America and especially Ontario and Canada allowing prop bets, allowing single game betting, it has really caused an uptick, not just in sponsorship money and sponsorships across the board. It's also now seemingly caused a problem within athletes because we've now seen multiple scandals across multiple years with players either getting caught for gambling or allegedly gambling. Right now with the Luis Ortiz and Emmanuel Clase incident with the Guardians, they're now going to court over that one. The recent indictments of Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, among 30 others, including mafia members, a part of that gambling scheme. It continues to be a topic that I think is important and I think needs to be touched on. It's just kind of hard because I don't really know what the problem is personally, Manny. Like, I don't know if it's just the microscopes on it more because we see it so much more, or if it is an uptick in guys participating in gambling, which is against all sports. You're not allowed to gamble once you are a professional athlete. That's usually written in your contract. So not only are they breaking contractual obligations, they're also obviously breaking, the fair play and fair use and the reason why we all love sports, which is your best versus my best. And we know when shaving points off, if you go back to the Black Sox or the NCAA scandals of past, it taints it a little bit and obviously makes it hard to love when you think about it from that perspective. So Manny, when you see reports like the Class A thing come out and the Billups and Rozier getting arrested, what is your feeling around why we're seeing it so much more since the big explosion of sports betting over the last couple of years?
Spencer, it's a great topic. I'm glad you're touching on it because you lost a lot of money last week. So I appreciate that you want to talk about this. Now, listen, I think it's in human nature for people to try to find a shortcut. And in this case, a shortcut to make money. And we are seeing more and more athletes get caught up with friends, some good and some not so good, and try to make them a little bit of money to either pay off a debt or just be a very good friend. And, Luis Ortiz of the Cleveland Guardians doesn't think anybody's going to pay attention to him, whether he throws a ball on the very first pitch of a game to help somebody make a little bit of money. But usually, if you try to create a shortcut or find a shortcut, somebody is going to find out. And in this case, the sports books have hired numerous companies to find out when they are being cheated. And that's how the Guardians pitchers got found out. That's how Jonte Porter got found out. That's how Terry Rozier got found out, because these integrity commissions and sports gambling go, there's quite a bit of activity on the Luis Ortiz first pitch in the 7th inning of a baseball game. How is that possible? And then when they try to do it a second time a week later, then the alarm bells go off. And I think I don't blame gambling per se. It's the human element that I blame in these people trying to find a shortcut. Now, there's a number of things that leagues can do, and I saw Major League Baseball, for example, cap sports betting on some prop bets, including first pitches. I would rather see that disappear. Like, just get rid of it altogether. Why are we capping it at $200 a bet? Like, But I understand when there's money involved, everybody wants to make money, and there's no going back. Once you open Pandora's box with all this money that's in the sport, including the advertisements that people say, you're not going to be able to close it. I do think that if leagues are worried about their integrity for their sports, they need to do a little bit more to police it. And that, in my opinion, means capping some of the prop bets in basketball and baseball. JC, Spencer, myself, I think leagues should be allowed to say, hey, I'll bet on the Eagles to beat the Packers on Monday Night Football, per se, or the Yankees to lose to the Blue Jays in the baseball playoffs. Because who knows, maybe that won't happen, per se. But the actual prop bets inside of games, that's where I think there's an issue, and sports will continue to have an issue because they're not banning those.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, Manny, the news statement just after Clase and Ortiz get indicted and accused of rigging certain pitches, they now put a cap of $200 on bets on individual pitches, meaning if it's a ball or strike or velocity of that pitch. Because Clase's particular accusation was that he was taking some off of pitches or throwing them into the dirt, as you mentioned with Ortiz. So it's something that we're going to have to talk about throughout. And again, I'm more interested in that hockey and football haven't had these issues yet. And maybe it's because of the physicality in them, you know, how do you rig a goal or an assist or a save or something like that? I guess it maybe makes it a little bit harder or a little bit easier to see versus, you know, missing one shot or, that slider hit the dirt. Because baseball margins are so fine, it's so easy to get away with something like that, as Clase and Ortiz did for some of the season until eventually found out and then put on administrative leave and now are going into their court case. So JC, you know, what were your thoughts when you hear about the NBA scandal that then kind of led into the MLB or vice versa?
Well, I think it's a problem that we're just going to see get worse and worse. And my thinking behind that is that it has really popped up a lot in the last couple of years, and it's affected all sports. It's affected players. It's affected coaches. It's affected an umpire in Major League Baseball. It's just everybody's getting caught up in it, and it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets better, unfortunately. I think we're just scratching the surface. The good news is, as a deterrent, we're seeing punishment and we're seeing penalties be handed out, whether that's, you know, a player losing half of a season like Shane Pinto did in the NHL, and he wasn't fixing games, but he was connected to betting on sports, which was still funny as a punishment of 41 games, considering the Ottawa Senators had a betting app on their jersey as a sponsor. So it kind of also, the leagues are to blame too, because they let these gambling companies in to be sponsors. And I mean, what do you think was going to happen, honestly? But as Manny mentioned, the Pandora's box is open. People are making money hand over fist in this world. I don't mean the bettors. I mean the companies and the investors behind them. So they don't want this to go away. So unfortunately, Major League Sports, the options are rather limited. You can ban gambling or ban your sports being gambled on, but you're going to lose money too. So that's never going to happen. You can continue to hand out massive penalties and fines to players who get caught, which might be a way to go to really up the ante in terms of the punishment. Or you can just make it okay amongst the players. I mean, prohibition. Remember that one time they banned booze and it got so bad with it being banned that they had to go, let these people drink. I guess it'll be a lot easier. Go watch Untouchables, by the way, kids. It's a great movie. But I think if it's going to get a lot worse, I think you might start to see the big major leagues talk about actually just making it an okay thing or putting caps on how much their players can gamble, because this problem just is not going to go away. And if you're a player that's getting caught, let's all remember the excuse you need to give. It wasn't me. It was my translator. That is your golden ticket out. Just pull the Shohei Ohtani card and you're scot-free. I mean, that's the rule, right? We all know he was really gambling, right? I mean, there's no way of everyone else that got caught and got punished. That's the guy that gets away with it. I wonder if it has to do with the $850 million contract.
And the money he brings in from Japan, because we can't talk about that LA Dodgers team and them not making money from the Japan market because they have all of those stars and a couple more coming over from the MPB this coming winter if they're able to get posted and signed in that 45-day period. But you kind of mentioned it there, JC, with the money being flushed into all these organizations, the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, from all these betting companies. And there's a plethora of them. There's, again, it doesn't matter what broadcast you watch. There's a different betting site on that brand who then shows you their odds and their props and, you know, their money lines and stuff like that. So there's not a shortage of companies trying to, you know, push their money into whatever sport you're looking at. So that also adds to, we're never going to get rid of this now. You've opened that box, as Manny mentioned, so you're never going to most likely get rid of it because, again, as you mentioned, JC, the money is just going to drop exponentially in all of the leagues, which they definitely don't want. I'm interested in the penalty idea, the fines or suspensions, because that hasn't stopped PEDs. Now, obviously, we could say it's a lot less, depending on what sport you look at, especially say in Major League Baseball. But if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying is a classic trope, and I think a big baseball trope from, you know, people looking in at pitches from, you know, far away at a stadium with a telescope, with, you know, trying to steal signs of technology now. Like, it's a sport that has a lot of shaving baseballs, spitballs, however you want to look at it. So I think it's going to be really difficult. And JC, the other thing I really want to point out that you said I think is really important, this is just the beginning. Like, we are in the beginning stages of what gambling in sports looks like, because it's only been allowed for the last, 3, 4, 5 years. Like, it's happened while I was in high school. I'm not that far removed. So for me, this is, you know, pretty normal. But for people who've watched sports for 30, 40 years, this is really new. This is something that they have not exactly experienced a lot. And for athletes, you know, when Pete Rose did it, it was a major news. He got banned from baseball. He's now probably never going to make the Hall of Fame over it. Now, when you have Emmanuel Clase, who is a great closer, but Luis Ortiz, who's a person you never really heard of, Jonte Porter was a 12th guy on the Raptors bench when he got his lifetime ban from the NBA. Like, I expect to see a lot more players that are role players or a little bit below that being like, you know what? You know, my salary's nice, but if I can make some extra money on the side doing something that, you know, quote unquote, it's a victimless crime, if you will, if it's just Jonte Porter in garbage minutes, missing shots, you know, in your mind, you can allow yourself to believe that. And it's a scary thought, JC. I genuinely think it's a really worrying thought for everybody to think, well, you know, if athletes that maybe don't make as much as, say, Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto, or you want to go to the top NHL players, top NFL players, you know, like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James, you know, all the Supermax deals, you know, Luka Doncic is going to get next summer. Like, it really does make you think, well, how many more guys are going to try this? Or how many guys have tried this and just weren't caught because they only did it once or twice or 3 times, you know, and I think it's all remembers people with the old NBA scandal with Tim Donahue. And I think we all saw the Flagrant Foul on Netflix, that documentary that they posted about that situation. And that was a deep-rooted one. That one lasted years before they caught Tim Donahue in the NBA reffing scope. And then you mentioned Pat Hoiberg of the MLB, the umpire who got suspended is now no longer an umpire in baseball for betting on baseball. So it's a worrying thought for me, I'll be honest. As someone who's I'll say, you know, sporting purist who, you know, wants to see best on best and just leave the result to the result, thinking that athletes would throw certain outcomes to win a bet for their friends or family or for themselves is a very worrying thought. But we now will move to the NHL. The NHL season has begun about a quarter through the season so far. Manny, I know your Habs have had a great start this year. I believe they still lead the Atlantic. Any other teams you think have surprised you to begin this NHL season, as we've now gotten a real good sample size of what teams look like?
Yeah, I guess I would say that I'm surprised that the Toronto Maple Leafs are not as good, as we are in Leafland. And if you talk to any Leafs fans, they will tell you that this was going to be their year, even though they did lose Mitch Marner. But the fact that they're not even in the wild card race right now, or in a wild card position, I should say. Everyone's still in the wild card race. The season is early. Surprises me. From a team that's performing very well. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode. The Utah Mammoth have played very, very well. The Edmonton Oilers, they haven't gotten off to the greatest start, even though they had that huge come-from-behind win against Columbus on Monday night. But I'm not too worried about the Oilers. They still have two of the best players in the game. They will figure it out. The Calgary Flames being dead last in the NHL, not surprised by that. I think Flames fans who thought maybe they would be okay were daydreaming. So I would say those teams, for good and bad, stand out for me. The Anaheim Ducks leading the Pacific. That's a really good story, too, with Joel Quenneville coming back as an impact coach in the National Hockey League.
I was just going to mention that they've lost 3 games in regulation of their first 15 with 11 wins. They lead the Pacific, and they've been so good to begin this year. Cutter Gauthier has been great from them after that trade from Philadelphia. Lucas Dostal has really shown he may be a number 1 goalie in the NHL. And then you mentioned teams that also, a team that I would say I didn't expect to be this good, Pittsburgh Penguins. They've been back in the playoff race after last year's down season. No one knew what they'd look like with all their aging core getting older. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Erik Karlsson, and they're right now in the thick of things in the Metro. JC, any teams you really like or have been disappointed with through the first 15 games or so?
Well, Montreal's pretty surprising, and they are a lot of fun to watch, especially when I see the Montreal highlights during the morning sports run. They've got a lot of really good young guys right now, and of course led by former Owen Sound attacker Nick Suzuki. I don't mind rooting for Montreal a little bit and seeing them do so well. Ottawa, I'll talk briefly about my Senators. I think they're off to a better start than they were last year. It's been a bit of a rough ride, but of course they are missing Brady Tkachuk for an extended amount of time, and I think if memory serves, the record now without him is 7-3-1. So they have kind of risen to the occasion. They got off to a slow start, but it's just something that's kind of the norm for the Senators. Would like to see a little bit better goaltending from their starting goaltender, but in the meantime, Levi Merilainen has been great as a backup and is picking up where he left off last season. So they could have a really good 1-2 punch if Allmark gets going. The Leafs, they always have a bad October, although they've played some really bad hockey as of late. And you kind of wonder what's up with that style of play. Losing Mitch Marner was one thing, but it doesn't make up for just some horrendous defense that they've had. So they're an interesting team to watch right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they figure they have to make a move here, because if this continues, they're going to be in real trouble heading into the latter part of the season. So we'll see what they do. Otherwise, Anaheim is off to a great start, and a couple of recent OHL graduates on that team. Pavel Menchikov is there, and of course Beckett Seneca, who's been looking real good. I guess he's not coming back, but that team's they've looked outstanding. In the West, I think Edmonton traditionally does kind of have a bad start to the season, and then all of a sudden they get rolling, and they're going to be rolling this time around. Although Connor McDavid's had a bit of a slow start, and I would not be surprised if you asked him and he honestly said, I'm kind of saving a bit of it for Italy, for the Olympics. And I think a lot of, these star guys right now that are going to be shipping off to the Olympics, if they're off to slow starts, it's because they've got bigger things on their mind right now. So I don't think you can blame Connor McDavid for that, but I would expect that he will probably light it up in the second half of the season. Other than that, yeah.
JC, I watched one of the sports highlight shows after my Eagles beat your Packers on Monday night, and watched the Oilers come back. Like, Connor McDavid was pissed. He was angry. He put the team on his back and got them the victory. Like, let's be honest here. They were down 3 goals at one point, and he put them on his back and got them to overtime, and they got a fluky goal in overtime. Like, if he can turn it on just like that, we shouldn't be worried about the Oilers at all. Right, JC?
Yeah, no, you're right, and I don't think he's going to take games off, but I do think he might nurse an injury a little more heading into the Olympics. But yeah, think about that wearing a Team Canada uniform. I mean, it's going to be exciting. We know how he rose to the occasion in the Four Nations tournament, so already kind of getting exciting about the prospect of February rolling around, and we get to see our first Olympics in 11 years. I think it's been a while.
Well, not just that, JC. It's also led guys to have great starts, to want to make that Olympic team. Macklin Celebrini's had a great start. Connor Bedard's had a great start. You mentioned Nick Suzuki with the Montreal Canadiens. All of those guys want to represent Canada at the Olympics. And then obviously there's a ton of other Canadians that want to represent Canada that may be on the outside looking in, and Americans as well. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody kind of figures that out amongst themselves. Like Cole Caulfield, I don't believe was on the introductory list for the Olympic team. I think that's changed, and I think he should have been on the original U.S. projected team, or however you want to word that, within their preliminary rosters. I think he's that good, but I think his start this year has really proven that for him and the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I do want to stick on the Leafs for just one more second, because the more important thing you guys have talked about is not just that they've been bad. Yeah, they've had their nights where they haven't been their best, but it's the really bad hockey. Like, they have bad Octobers, they struggle to begin years, and they kind of warm themselves up. But it's some of the games they've played where they've been awful. Like, they've either been lucky to be in games, or they somehow sneak away with a win, or they get blown out because they didn't play well. And that's across the board. Like, I've heard nights of Nylander had a bad night, and he's got 23 points. Matthews has like 9 goals in 14 games. He's had really bad nights. Like, he's been invisible. Morgan Riley struggled in the defensive end, which we all know he has struggled throughout his career in the defensive end. So, JC, I'll stick with you on this one. Do you think it's Craig Berube that's on the hot seat? Do you see them maybe moving another one of their core pieces? Or do you think it's just things eventually will find their level and they'll figure themselves out by themselves?
I mean, Berube, I kind of like him as a coach, but at the same time, I can kind of see how that style, it could lose a dressing room fairly easily. And it does happen to guys like that. I don't necessarily think you blame the coaching at this point. I think it's a little too early to start whispers of Berube's got to get out of here. I think he'll probably stick around unless it gets really bad. I mean, if November repeats as October did, and they really see themselves out of that wild card race, then maybe you start to look at that a little bit closer. But I think that there's definitely some moves to be made there in terms of player personnel. You've already broken up one part of that core four in Mitch Marner, and maybe it's time to start looking at breaking up some other pieces. I've said it on the show before. I don't think Matthews is the best leader. I don't see them ever even considering trading them, but I think you kind of need to think about that kind of a blockbuster trade, because the room, I mean, you've already started to break it. The hardest part is getting the first one out. Mitch Marner's gone, so maybe think about the rest. And it could be a huge deal, like a blockbuster that we talk about for years if you're going to move Austin Matthews. But that said, too, you send down a guy like Easton Cowan. So how long is he going to be down? Is he a guy that, I mean, yeah, he's young, he's small, he's learning the game, but you had him with Matthews. He did some good, pretty cool stuff up at the NHL level. He got his first NHL goal. Maybe you got to bring him back up at some point and fire up that lineup a little bit. But I don't think that they definitely don't have the right pieces, and they've built up in the wrong areas and overspent in the wrong areas.
Yeah, it almost feels like one of those situations where it's a faulty foundation, and you can kind of see the house moving with the wind when it blows. Manny, before we move on, if we're able to with time now, looking at the Leafs, do you see Berube on the hot seat? Do you see, as JC mentioned, maybe another big piece being moved? Nylander, Matthews, Tavares, Mo, Morgan Riley, etc. Or do you think they'll be able to figure themselves out?
I think if we take you back to the summer when they were talking about whether to keep Marner and keep the core together or break it up. That was the conversation before Mitch Marner said, no, I'm leaving no matter what, right? There was a clock put on Austin Matthews. I think the clock just gets sped up here. There's no way Craig Berube is getting fired. Not in year two. I think, if anything, if this team doesn't perform or even make the playoffs, I think you'll start to hear more about trading Matthews before you start hearing more about firing Berube.
Well, you heard it here first. It sounds like Austin Matthews may be looking for a new location. We would say Arizona, but they're no longer in Arizona. They're in Utah. So I guess we'll have to figure out the new landing spot for him. Maybe it's in Vegas. Maybe they'll go join his best friend Mitch Marner in Nevada. But with the last couple of minutes here, guys, we will go to the NFL. Manny, as you guys mentioned earlier, the Eagles did beat the Packers on Monday Night Football 10-7 in an absolutely scintillating game of offensive football in a 17-point game total. I love anyone who took the under in that game down at Lambeau. But looking at the NFL playoff picture, most teams have played between 9 and 10 games so far, Manny. Are there any teams that right now you think are going to be the cream of the crop, or do you still see a lot of teams that are still in the middle of the pack right now and still trying to find, who is the alpha in either conference?
Listen, there are some really good teams. So, of course, everybody's talking about the Seahawks and the Rams. Do you trust Sam Darnold after what you saw from the Minnesota Vikings last year? Maybe we should ask the Packers fan that. Do you trust Matthew Stafford, who was playing MVP like football? Is he about to stay healthy? Because remember, at the beginning of the year, everybody was talking about his back and whether he was going to miss the start of the season. Can he stay healthy? Because we're only heading into week 10. There's still a lot more football to play. It's only halfway through the season. Then you have the playoffs. So my question is, will Matthew Stafford be able to stay healthy? But those two teams look very, very good. And then, of course, there's the Detroit Lions. They beat up on some of the weaker opponents. Can they play with the big boys? We'll find out. They take on the Eagles this coming weekend. That should be a great contest on Sunday Night Football. Can the Packers figure out their offense? Can the Eagles figure out their offense? There's questions about every single team. And if you look at the AFC, everybody still believes the Chiefs will do it. They want to see Drake May and the Patriots perform a whole lot more. And I think the Ravens, who had one win in 6 games, they're going to win their division and get in the playoffs.
Yeah, still a lot of things to play for, especially in that AFC North. JC, about 30 seconds. Any teams that you look at right now as maybe the cream of the crop right now in the NFL?
Indianapolis. I like the moves they made at the deadline. They clearly are pushing their chips in the middle, so expect to see them potentially do some damage. A little bit shocking to see the slow start that Kansas City is out to, but somehow they always find a way. So I wouldn't count out Patrick Mahomes just yet. It's been surprising some of the losses the Bills have had, especially this past weekend. But all in all, I think you're seeing most teams do exactly what you would expect at this point of the season.
Again, I kind of want to mention off for Manny Pava, the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs currently are outside of the playoff picture. Obviously, the Ravens look to be claiming maybe a division title over the Steelers, but we'll just have to see how everything irons out. And right now, with the Broncos 8-2, the Chiefs have a long hill to climb to be able to get that division back. But that'll be it here for us. For Manny Pava, JC Coots, myself, Spencer Byers, we'll see you next week here on RTV Sports Rap.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Hi, I'm Carol Merton, host of HealthLink on Rogers TV. HealthLink connects home, community, and healthcare with interesting topics and speakers about your health and your community.
Thursdays.
These cases are hard. It's okay if you don't want to fight, because we are going to fight for you.
We have to be able to say we did everything we could.
Every move we make is being scrutinized.
He needs to pay for what he did.
Some things in life you can't run from.
I'm going to make sure that you spend the rest of your days